But I think it's more about drawing pictures, right? Okay, connective tissue. Vary in appearance and function. It's throughout the body, but never exposed to the outside. Okay? Many have blood vessels and sensory receptors, and 10% of cancers occur from connective tissue. If it ends in the word sarcoma, like osteosarcoma, bone cancer, osteo is bone, bone is a part of connective tissue. If it ends with sarcoma, it's connective tissue origin. Remember, 85% of cancers stem from epithelial origin. 10% of cancers stem from connective tissue origin. Okay? That leaves 5%. That's 5% going to be muscle and nervous tissue. Very low turnover in those two things. Alright, these are the functions of the connective tissue. You can read them on your own, but we'll go through them as we go through the rest of the connective tissue. Now, basic features of connective tissue, and you can use CT, that's a pretty common abbreviation for connective tissue throughout the world. So basic features of connective tissue. All will contain specialized cells, and I'll introduce you to those when we do this. They'll have fibers and they'll have fluids. We also call the fluids ground substance. Now, if you take the fibers and fluids together, the fibers and ground substance together, and we eliminate the special cells, we call it the matrix. Not like the movie, but the matrix. Okay? And, the way this is broken down, even though it's the monster of all your histology, it's very organized. There's three main types of connective tissue, and then there's subtypes of those. We either have connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissue, which is going to be your blood and lymph, but we're going to focus more on blood. And then we have supportive connective tissue that's either going to be cartilage or bone. Okay? Connective tissue proper could either be loose or dense. And we have 3 loose and we have 3 dense. They're all compartmentalized. It's all organized. You'll be able to see it. It won't be so hard. The specialized cell that's in connective tissue proper is something called a fibroblast. A fibroblast is going to produce all the fibers in there, namely elastic fibers and collagen fibers. Collagen fibers are going to lay down the bulk of the connective tissue. That's what's going to give the bulk of it. The elastic fibers are very thin fibers that give it elasticity. It gives a little, like your ear. Okay? Fluid connective tissue is blood and lymph, but we're going to concentrate on blood. Then we have supportive connective tissue that is going to be cartilage and bone. There's 3 types of cartilages, and you'll get to know that like the back of your hand. Don't worry about that. Okay? And bone, we're going to talk about too, but we have a whole section on bone in lecture that we're going to talk about how bone is formed. You got spongy bone and compact bone. We'll get into that too. So, this is how it's broken down. Connective tissue is broken down into connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissue, supportive connective tissue. The connective tissue proper could be dense or loose. We have 3 loose ones, we got 3 dense ones. Fluid connective tissue can either be blood or lymph. We're going to focus on blood. Supportive connective tissue can either be bone or cartilage. And in cartilage, there's 3 different types. So it's very compartmentalized, very organized for you. Now, let's just step for a moment and talk about stem cells a little bit. Stem cells, all the connective tissue stems from one thing called mesenchyme. Mesenchyme is a stem cell, an undifferentiated cell that's going to get specialized. It can become specialized and become a fibroblast and will make all your connective tissue proper tissues. There's 6 of them, 3 dense and 3 loose. The mesenchyme could be a chondroblast. Chondro itself means cartilage. So it's going to make the 3 types of cartilage. It could be an osteoblast, and it's going to make bone. Or it could be something, here's a big word for you, hematopoietic stem cell, which makes all the blood tissue. Let me just explain to you briefly what a bone marrow transplant is. I'm going to make it very simple for you so that you understand the way that stem cells can be used. For some reason, this person is producing white blood cells that are becoming cancerous. They're being produced in the bone marrow, inside the bone. And they're producing these cancerous cells all the time. So the stem cells producing cancer cells, not good. So this is what the doctors are going to do. And this is very simplistic, much more complex than this. He's going to poison the body and destroy the bone marrow in that person so that those stem cells are not going to produce any more cells. Kill them. And then they're going to find a good match, someone that's going to match that person's DNA and stuff as much as best as it could. Which, by the way, the best person is your sibling. So please, don't fight with your brother or sister. You might need them. Okay? So you're going to destroy all their bone marrow, so the stem cells aren't going to produce any more cells. Then you're going to get a donor who has a pretty good match, take some of his or her stem cells and put them into your now empty bone marrow, and hopefully those stem cells will produce good blood cells. That's basically, in a nutshell, what a bone marrow transplant is. It's much more complex, but that's a very simplified version of what that is. Okay? So stem cells, and you're going to see that with stem cell research and stuff. Okay? Questions about that? Okay. Now this is basically all the different types of connective tissue. They're not all here. We're going to go through them all, but this is the majority of them. And it's in a chart form. Here's the different types, the description, and the functions of them. But we're going to go step by step with them. Okay? These are not all of them. It's most of them. You're also going to see the difference when we deal with cartilage and bone. And when we do that in a lecture, you'll see the differences. But let me just show you what I mean. Cartilage does not have any blood vessels. Okay? Vascularity, there is none. In bone, it's extensive. So let me ask you this. If I break my bone, or if I tear my cartilage, which one's going to heal faster? Bone or cartilage? Oh, I'm mixed up. Let me explain to you. If there's something that's very vascular, isn't it easier to bring the oxygen and the nutrients to that place? So bone is going to have all those nutrients and oxygen going right there to help build that new bone. Cartilage doesn't have the vascularity there. So its way of getting all its nutrients is through simple diffusion. That could take a long time in that area there. You break a bone, it'll take 6 to 8 weeks to heal. You tear cartilage, it'll take years for that to heal. So instead of just trying to memorize things, the way I'm teaching is that you need to know how to apply that. So why do we need to know that? That's why you need to know. I'm sure you'll use that later on, if not for your career, for your own self. When a doctor tells you that you tore cartilage, you're already thinking, doctor, it's going to be a couple years for it to heal. And he'll say, if that, right? It might take longer. But he is already, or she is already on the same page with you. Okay? Okay, so we'll get into those when we get into lecture, though. All right? All right, so cartilage with some images. Here we go. You ready? All right, and these images came from your lab book. So we're going to do connective tissue proper first. There's 3 dense and 3 loose. So this is just a schematic view of connective tissue proper in general. You're going to have cells over here, and the colors don't really correspond, but it's a pretty good schematic thing. You have this fibroblasts over here that are going to lay down this blue fibers here, and actually they're pink, but these blue fibers here, and they're the collagen fibers. Fibroblasts will lay down fibers. Makes sense. They're also going to produce these orange things, which are really black in real life, but these are elastic fibers. So the fibroblasts will lay down collagen fibers, which is the bulk of the connective tissue, and the elastic fibers to give it flexibility. Okay? There's other cells in there, and we'll get into those later. So our first loose connective tissue is something called loose areolar connective tissue. You can see it's loose. You can see right through it. You see the white behind there? You can see right through it. It's loose. You're going to see the nuclei, these blue nuclei around here. Those are the nuclei of the fibroblasts. You'll also see the thick pink bands. Those are your collagen fibers. You see the thin dark strands. That's going to be your elastic fibers. This is going to be widely distributed throughout your entire body. You see it around organs, giving it like cushion and stuff. Holds things together. This is adipose tissue. You're looking at fat. Adipose tissue is big cells that have fat in it, triglycerides, holds energy. Its nucleus would normally be in the middle, but because there's so much fat in there, they kind of get pushed off to the side. They don't stain well, because fat, when you mix oil and water together, they kind of separate. So these don't stain well, so they appear very clear-like. They need special stains. Okay? So that's adipose tissue. Loose, you can see right through it. This is loose reticular connective tissue. This is going to be found in the spleen and in the lymph nodes. And here, you're going to see thick, dark bands. These are reticular fibers. This is going to be found in the immune system organs, like I said, lymph nodes and spleen. You'll also see white blood cells in there. White blood cells are going to help fight infections. Okay? So those are your three loose connective tissues. Loose areolar, loose adipose, loose reticular. Okay? Bite, bite, bite. That's how you eat that elephant. Okay? Now, let's talk about the dense ones. This is dense, regular connective tissue. Notice how tight those bands are. You can't really see through them. It's tight. But you could also notice that these strands are all going the same way. They're all going in a unique, regular way. That's why we call it dense, regular. This will be found in tendons and ligaments, where you would expect it to be very strong so you don't tear your bones apart. A little tip for you. What's a ligament? What's a tendon? Tendons connect muscles to bones. Ligaments connect bones to bones. Think about muscle being really tense. Tendons. Okay? Then you have dense, irregular connective tissue. This is found in the dermis of the skin, underneath the epidermis. You also see it in capsules of joints. But in this case, the fibers have no rhyme or reason which way they're going, but they're pretty close together. They're irregular. So we have dense regular and dense irregular. You can see there is no rhyme or reason which way they're going, but they're pretty dense. And then you have dense elastic. You can see the elastic fibers in there. And there's a lot of them, and they're very dense. You can't see through there. They seem to be going in a regular fashion, but it's different than seeing dense regular. You could see there's elastic fibers here, how dark they are. this is going to be found in your larger blood vessels, namely the one that leads right from the heart. It's called the aorta. These are the ones that are, with the amount of pressure of that blood leaving the heart, you don't want the aorta to burst open with that huge amount of pressure. You want it to be able to withstand that pressure, but you need it to recoil back down to its size. That recoiling action is called elasticity. And for it to do it well, you better have a lot of elastic fibers in there. So this you're going to find mainly in the aorta, which is the first main blood vessel coming out of the heart. Be careful of this picture. Notice it says aorta and heart. It is not in the heart. They're only showing you or labeling heart here so it kind of orients you of where the aorta is. But it's only found in the aorta, not the heart. It's in other places too, but not the heart. All right? That's it for connective tissue proper. We just knocked off 6. It's not bad. Okay? Again, let me show you again. Loose areolar, loose adipose, loose reticular. Then we have 3 denses. Dense regular, dense irregular, dense elastic. Okay? It's a lot, but it's organized. Okay? Questions about that? Okay. Let's talk about the fluid connective tissues. The one I want to concentrate on is blood. So blood is the body's fluid tissue. Keep in mind, these are the only cells that we're going to talk about, or that are in the human body, that are not connected to anything besides metastatic cancer cells. But I'm talking about normal cells. These do not connect to anything. It's composed of plasma, which is the fluid matrix, by the way, when we're talking about blood. And it has what we call formed elements, the solid parts. There's 3 formed elements. Erythrocytes, which are red blood cells known as RBCs. You can abbreviate RBCs, it's universally accepted. But just recognize your erythrocytes. Erythro means red, cytes meaning cells. You got to recognize that because they will be using that on exams and stuff. Leukocytes, or white blood cells, are WBCs. Thrombocytes, leuco means white, and you can spell leuco L-E-U-C, I've seen that too. Thrombo means clots, so these are clotting cells. They're also known as platelets or PLTs. Okay? So the formed elements is erythrocytes, leukocytes, and thrombocytes, or platelets. Now, we have a lot more erythrocytes in our blood. About 48%, 45% of our blood is red blood cells. Okay? About 93%, about 55% is plasma, and then less than 1% is leukocytes and platelets. But if you want to know the percentage of red blood cells in your whole blood, the percentage of red blood cells in the whole blood, that has a special name called a hematocrit. It's the percentage of red blood cells in your whole blood. Red blood cells carry oxygen. So if you have less than 45%, you're anemic, right? These are what it looks like. Your erythrocytes, we have many of them. And they look like you saw before, they look like Sirt's candies. To you, it probably looks like a donut, but that would be misleading because there is no hole in there. It really is, looks like this. but it looks like a search candy, not a lifesaver. When you look at a side view of it, it's shaped like this. I'm exaggerating a little bit, yeah. So when light comes in here, light cannot get through here. But light can easily pass through there. So it looks like there's a hole in there. There's no hole. What is the red blood cells missing? Starts with an N, ends with a euclid. Oh, see, you know it. At this late hour, you see, you're up with your, you catch on to this, right? They don't have a nucleus. It was excluded out, or extruded out rather. Okay? Because it wants to pack it with a lot of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin carries oxygen. So if we knock off the nucleus, then we could put more hemoglobin in there. Can a red blood cell go through mitosis? No. It doesn't have a nucleus. What chromosomes is in a red blood cell? Right. Okay? So they have a lifespan. They only have about 120 days before they actually die. So but you'll learn more about that in hematology. So here's your red blood cells. We have a lot of those. We have platelets, which look like a little speck there. Okay? And then we have white blood cells, which are big, and the nucleus kind of looks weird. Now, there's 5 types of white blood cells. I am not going to ask you about the 5 types. All right? There's neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, basophils, and eosinophils. Okay? I'm not going to ask you about that, but if you see in your books, just call it a white blood cell and call it a day. Okay? You'll learn about those different types and identifying those different types in AP2. But you can see there's 2 different ones over here. That's a lymphocyte and that's a neutrophil. But just call it a white blood cell and call it a day. Okay? So the only cell that we have over here that's a true cell in terms of blood is which? The white blood cell. Because the red blood cell doesn't have a nucleus. So that doesn't really make it a cell. It doesn't have a nucleus anymore. Okay? And a platelet, that's really not a cell either. It's really a fragment off of a gigantic cell. Take a plate, smash it on the ground, take a piece, you got a platelet. That's basically what a platelet is. Okay? So the only one that could go through mitosis is a white blood cell. Okay? Basic functions. Red blood cells are going to carry oxygen and a little bit of carbon dioxide. The white blood cell is going to fight infections, and platelets are going to clot blood, stop bleeding. That's the basic mechanisms of them. Now, if you understand the functions, this is where I'm trying to wire your brain. If you understand the functions, then how do you apply this for your future? Let's take, for instance, platelets. If you know it's supposed to clot blood, and you are low on platelets, you're going to have what we call a hypocoagulable state. You cut yourself and it's supposed to heal or form a clot in, let's say, 4 minutes. How long is it going to take you to clot blood if you're low on platelets? Longer. 14, 15 minutes. Depends on how low it is. Might not ever clot. Okay? Makes sense. If you have too many platelets, then you're going to clot when you shouldn't even clot. I didn't break a blood vessel, but I'm forming a clot there. Now it just gets too happy and wants to clot no matter what. You have a hypercoagulable state. See? Let's look at this one, red blood cells. If you have too little red blood cells and they carry oxygen, you're going to have some form of anemia. You can't get oxygen from one point to the other because there's not many oxygen in the cars. If you have too many red blood cells, it's a condition called polycythemia. Now you're thinking, well, why is that a bad thing? A lot of red blood cells are there. Well, think of it like this. If every car can only have 4 people in it, so a red blood cell can have, let's say, 4 oxygens in it. There's a lot more than that, but I'm just using this as an example, an analogy. If we could put a car that has 4 people in it, and a red blood cell has 4 oxygens in it, if we put more cars on the highway, there's more oxygen on the highway, is there not? But what's going to happen to blood flow? When you put more cars on the highway, it's going to slow down. You're going to have traffic there. So you put more red blood cells in the bloodstream, then to go from point A to point B, it's going to be very slow. The blood is going to get very viscous, syrupy. And that actually leads to high blood pressure too. If you know anything about blood doping, that's what we're going to talk about in A&P2, but that's what blood doping is all about. And that's what our concern is with that. Okay? White blood cells, they're supposed to fight infections. So if you have too little of it, it can't fight infections. HIV is a good example of that. And if you have too many white blood cells, well, that can be an appropriate thing or not. If there's a lot of crimes happening in this town, we're going to put more police officers in. That's an appropriate thing. If you have an infection, you're going to build up more white blood cells to fight the infection. So when we look at someone's blood and there's a lot of white blood cells there, you know, and they have pneumonia, well, that kind of makes sense. But if they're supposed to be healthy, why are you making so many white blood cells? That could be leukemia. That could be cancer cells going on. So again, this is what I mean by wiring your brain. If you know the function, then what if you eliminate the function? What if you make the function too great? That's what I'm saying, is get into that mode of thinking how you would use this later on in your life. Remember, my philosophical, or my teaching philosophy is learn like you're going to live forever. Don't do this for the test. Do this to see how you can actually use this later on. Okay? All right, so let's talk about supportive connective tissues. Okay? Cartilage and bone. There's three cartilages. Here's the first one. Hyaline bone. Hyaline cartilage. In hyaline cartilage, or cartilage for that matter, there's going to be these cubby holes. These holes here. They're called lacuna. And inside the lacuna, you're going to have certain cells, and they're called chondrocytes. Chondro meaning cartilage. And they live in these lacuna. The matrix is this area here. And in hyaline cartilage, the matrix is very smooth. The consistency is very smooth. There's no really fibers that you can see there. And it's just smooth. You usually see this in the ends of long bones. We'll talk about that, something called articular cartilage. We'll see it in the cartilage in your nose, in the trachea. Okay? Also, on the rib cage, in front of the rib cage, all of this is hyaline cartilage. Okay? To name a few places. This is elastic cartilage. You can see the lacuna there. So already you're thinking cartilage. But the matrix is a little bit different. In the matrix, it has these fibers in here. Those are elastic fibers. This is cartilage that you would find in your ear, kind of give it that flexibility. So when you see lacuna there, you know it's cartilage. But when you see the fibers, in there, now you know it's elastic cartilage. Fibrous cartilage, also known as fibrocartilage, same thing. You could see the lacuna there with the chondrocytes. But the other thing that you can notice is the color. Very rarely should I not see fibrocartilage as being blue. It's this beautiful blue color. Something you can put on your fireplace mantle. Okay? The blue is what's going to give it away. Okay? At least on my test, because I've only seen it that way. I'm sure there's other ways that it's stained, but this is the way I've always seen it. That's going to be found in between your vertebra and your backbones. They're called intervertebral discs. And that's where you'll find the fibrocartilage. So you have three cartilages there. Hyaline cartilage, where the matrix has a smooth consistency. Elastic cartilage, where the matrix has these fibers running through it, these dark fibers. And the fibrocartilage has the matrix being glue. All three of them have lacuna there. Okay? Questions about that? You okay with that? Okay. Compact bone. Bone. Another one that's pretty easy to figure out what it is, because there's nothing else that looks like tree stumps. Okay? Alright, so let's take a look at this closer. And this will actually get you prepared for tomorrow. That's why I want to do histology before I did skeletal with you. We have a bone over here. A long bone. Okay? I'm going to make a cross section here and blow it up here. So you have this. Okay? In the center here, it's going to be hollow. This hollow area is called the medullary cavity. And inside the medullary cavity, you are going to have bone marrow. Either red bone marrow or yellow bone marrow. Again, you'll learn about that in the lecture. But this is going to be bone marrow. The lining of the bone marrow, the lining of the medullary cavity, has another name. It's called the endosteum. The lining that's going to be all around the bone itself that's called the periosteum. It's just connective tissue that hold the whole thing together. Next time you go to KFC, look at one of the bones. Take one of the bones after you've done taking the meat off, and take your knife and try and pick at the bone itself. It starts fraying a little bit. That's the periosteum. Tell your parents that. Ooh, look, periosteum. But that's what that is. Then you're going to have, underneath the endosteum, something called spongy bone. Now, explaining what spongy bone kind of looks like, you ladies will know what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to discriminate. I just think that you guys know more about it than the other guys. It looks like a loofah. Right? You girls know what I'm talking about, right? Right. For the guys here, it's that thing that looks like some sort of creature that came from the underworld of the water. It's this long tubular thing that looks like a, I don't know how to explain it. It looks like a sponge, but it looks creepier. But it's there. You know, if you so next time, you know, if you either live with your mom or your sister or your girlfriend, that's what that is in there. But you gotta understand, you ladies are doing it for us, right? To, you know, to scrub your skin, to exfoliate your skin, so it gets very supple for us. I guess that's the reason why. All right, so you use that on us. But anyway, but that's what that looks like. Spongy bone looks like that. All right, how it's interwoven like that, right? So that's spongy bone. That's the medullary cavity. And then you have these tree stumps going all around here. And I'm not going to draw them all around. You'll get the idea by just showing it over here. And that's what we call compact bone. Does that make sense? This will be on a practical coming up soon. Okay? Looks kind of weird, but I'll show you what it is. You see it? Periosteum's over here. Here's where the bone marrow medullary cavity is. The lining of it is the endosteum. You could also see some of the spongy bone here. You could also see all of the compact bone that's happening there. All right, periosteum, medullary cavity. The lining of it is the endosteum. Spongy bone you can see here. Okay, questions on that? This will come back to you when we deal with skeletal system. Now, we got to look at it closer. We okay with it so far? All right, now, what I want to do is take one of these tree stumps and blow it up. Okay? First off, this whole thing is called, has a few names. It could be called the Haversian system or an osteon. Same thing. In the center is called the Haversian canal. There you're going to have blood vessels. A Haversian artery and Haversian vein. So Haversian blood vessels are in there. These rings that you're seeing here, these concentric rings, are called lamellae. There, it's written there, lamellae. You also see lamella without the E. Adding an E makes it plural. All right, so either one is fine on the test. You'll also start seeing watermelon seeds all around here. These are called lacunae, like we saw it in the cartilage. Inside the lacunae, as much as we saw inside the lacunae cartilage, we saw chondrocytes. Inside the lacunae of bone, we're going to see osteocytes. Off of these watermelon seeds, they're going to now start looking like spiders, because we have these little rivers coming out like that. These are called canaliculi. And they're little rivers that connect the lacunae together. They're up there too, right? Canaliculi. Yep. Now this is what's going to happen here. Bone is highly vascular. There's a lot of blood vessels in there. But the blood vessels are in the eversion canal. They're not here. But this needs nutrients over here. So how does it get nutrients? Well, the nutrients are going to come from the blood vessels, and they're going to go through the canaliculi into the lacuna where the osteocytes are. The osteocytes are going to take in those oxygen and take in the glucose, whatever it needs, make ATP, make proteins, and pass the nutrients from this lacuna into the next one through the canaliculi. That one passes it to this one, and so forth. The osteocytes are giving nutrients to the bone because of the vascularity that's happening in the eversion canals. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, I'm going to introduce you to 3 cells. Well, I already talked about osteocytes, so 2 other ones. There's things called osteoblasts. The osteoblasts are going to lay down the bulk of the bone. Think of wanting to paint the floor here. The osteoblasts are going to, you got to have some person just to go in and, who cares, be messy about it, but put the bulk of the paint down on the floor and just put it all over the place. Just put it all over the floor. Get the bulk down. They're going to be messy. They're going to go on the desk, up the desk over here, on the walls, but they're putting the bulk down, and they're going to paint them. They're going to paint all over the floor over here until they paint themselves into a corner where they can't get out anymore. Now they just painted themselves in this corner. They can't get out. So the osteoblasts are going to put down the bulk of the bone, and then they put themselves in this little hole here called a lacuna, and now they're known as an osteocyte. Does that make sense? Osteoblasts lay down the bulk of the bone, lay down the matrix of the bone, they paint themselves in a corner, and now they're in a little lacuna there, and now they're known as an osteocyte. And the osteocyte, its job is to give the bone nutrients, as I just showed you with the canaliculi. But we have a problem. They were messy. You have paint that's on the wall and on the desk. So we have someone else that's going to come in and clean up the act. They're called osteoclasts. The osteoclasts are going to go in and take some of that paint off the wall, and that paint is really calcium. And it's going to chomp down on that calcium and clean it up, God bless you, and bring that calcium. And you have to think on a microscopic level, but it's going to put this calcium or chips of calcium into the bloodstream. That's what osteoclasts are. They're little Pac-Men that are going to chomp away and get this calcium into the bloodstream. So what you're going to see in tomorrow's lecture is the osteoblasts take calcium from the blood and put it into the bone. Osteoclasts take calcium from the bone and put it into the blood. They work together. As I said before, calcium, yeah, it makes your bones strong, your teeth strong. That's minor. Calcium is more important for nerve conduction and muscle contraction. If your heart doesn't pump, who cares if your bones are strong, right? That's what I mean by it's secondary. Okay? They're more important for muscle and nerve conduction. you'll be in a coma if it's not working, if you don't have, interaction in your brain, this interneuron fighting or sending another message to another interneuron. You need that nerve conduction. So the special cells is the osteoblasts are going to lay down the bulk of the bone, the matrix of the bone, taking the calcium from the outside, from the blood, and put it into the bone. Osteoclasts are going to break down the bone, something we say resorb the bone, and put the calcium into the bloodstream when we're low on calcium in the bloodstream. Osteocytes were osteoblasts, but now they're going to be living in the lacuna, and they're going to give nutrients to the bone itself. Okay? Does that make sense with the three? Make my life, your life a little bit easier when we get into the bone and lecture. It'll be all put together. Again, that's why I wanted to do this part before that. Okay? Alright, so let's look at the connective tissue slides that I took pictures of. Alright? That's loose here. Now we're going back. It sounds like it's been a while, but we've got loose versus dense. So we have 3 loose and 3 dense. Loose areolar. There it is at 40x. Doesn't say much. You could say it's loose though. You could see right through it. You get up closer and closer. That's a fibroblast nucleus. The thick pink strands is your collagen. The thin dark strands is the elastic fibers. Okay? Here's adipose tissue, fat. Okay? Doesn't really stain well. It repels the stain. And the nucleus is kind of pushed off to the side because there's so much fat in there, it kind of pushes it. That's loose adipose. A close-up of it. Okay? This is loose reticular connective tissue. Spleen, lymph node. This is where the immune system really kicks in. You get up really close, and you can see these thicker, dark strands. They're thicker than elastic fibers. These are reticular fibers that you're seeing here. But it's loose. You can see right through it. Okay? So again, we have loose areolar, loose adipose, and loose reticular. All connective tissue proper. Now we have dense, regular connective tissue. A tendon or ligament. Can't say much at that level. Can't say much at that level. Bingo. Looks better. You can see that they're all going the same direction. And you can't, well, you can see through only because it's the way it's stained, but they're pretty tight together. So this is dense, regular. That's where it's really close up. Then we have dense, irregular. Like under the skin. And you can get really close up. They're going in all different directions. They're pretty close together though, thus the name dense. Here's dense elastic. Getting up closer, closer. You can see those elastic fibers here, and they're pretty tight together. And this is where you can see it in the aorta. So we had 3 loose and 3 dense. 3 loose, loose areolar, loose adipose, loose reticular. Dense, we have 3. Dense regular, dense irregular, dense elastic. 6 subtypes of connective tissue proper. Then we have cartilage. You've seen this picture before. This is the trachea. The lining of the trachea, we showed you. That was the pseudostratified epithelium. We're not looking up there, we're going to concentrate here. The rings that are around the trachea, they're cartilage rings. And when you get up really close, there's a lacuna. But look at the matrix, how smooth that consistency is. No fibers in there. That's going to give it away that it's hyaline cartilage. Kind of looks like grape soda with the bubbles there. Right? This is fibrocartilage. You get up close, you definitely can say it's cartilage because you can see the lacuna there. What color is it? Blue. Okay? So that's going to give it away that this is fibrocartilage or fibrous cartilage. This is elastic cartilage. You definitely see the lacuna there, but you see also the fibers going through here. It's not smooth like hyaline. You have these elastic fibers going through here. That's making this elastic cartilage. Then you got compact bone. I don't think anybody in this room is going to have an issue with identifying that's compact bone. There's nothing else that looks like that. Okay? Looks like tree stumps. So when you get close, as I drew for you over there, there's a Haversian canal. You can see the concentric rings, the bullseye kind of look. That's the lamellae. You could see the, well, if I get up really close, you could see the lacuna there. And inside there, normally an osteocyte would be found. You could also appreciate the little rays coming off. Those are the canaliculi. Then you got blood. Numerous red blood cells all around here that carry oxygen. You could definitely see the platelets, those little specks over there, scattered. Those are going to help clot blood. And there's a white blood cell that's going to fight infections. A little tip, should there be a question on a test, a function of the white blood cell is not to fight disease. I mean, it does, but diabetes, high blood pressure, what disease are you talking about? Fights infections? Yes. Fighting disease is very vague. Okay? And this is just another picture showing that.